Deep below deck, she worked in silence, sleeves rolled up, eyes fixed on the control panel. To the rest of the crew, she was just another technician assigned to assist with missile loading drills. The USS Independence was preparing for inspection, and no one expected the Admiral himself to walk through the bay that morning. When he approached her station, the intercom cracked with a message that made him freeze. Authorization override detected. Clearance level Omega. Confirming active command. Spectre 1. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of hidden strength and quiet redemption, subscribe for more powerful narratives that remind us sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight. Lieutenant Commander Thaddeus Blackwell moved through the missile bay, clipboard in hand, inspecting final preparations for tomorrow's high-profile visit. The USS Independence was the Navy's newest Virginia-class submarine, and Admiral Zenith Hargrove was not known for his forgiveness of imperfection. Sailors and technicians rushed around Blackwell, polishing equipment and running diagnostics, nervousness evident in their hurried movements. In stark contrast to the nervous energy, Sorel Vega worked methodically at her station, head down, adjusting a Tomahawk missile's guidance system with unusual precision. At 36, she was older than most specialists at her rank, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her movements economical and practiced. Blackwell approached, eyeing her with barely concealed suspicion. "You're the new weapons specialist? From where again?" "Naval Support Facility Indian Head, sir," Sorel responded, without looking up from her panel, her fingers continuing their work. "And they sent their best, did they?" Blackwell said, sarcasm thinly veiled. Several nearby sailors snickered, exchanging glances. Sorel continued working, seemingly unbothered by the mockery. "Just doing my job, sir." Lieutenant Niazia Lockhart, the ship's weapons systems officer, stepped closer, observing Sorel's work. Her expression shifted from casual observation to subtle confusion as she watched the new specialist's procedures. "Those calibration sequences," Lockhart noted quietly, "they're not standard Navy protocol." "They're more efficient," Sorel answered simply. "Less room for human error." "We follow standard protocols on this vessel, specialist," Blackwell cut in. "You're not here to innovate." Sorel nodded and adjusted her approach, but when Blackwell turned away to continue his inspection, she quietly returned to her original method. Lockhart noticed but said nothing, her eyes narrowing slightly. The submarine hummed around them, the gentle vibration of the nuclear propulsion system creating a constant, living presence. For most of the crew, it was background noise, but Sorel seemed attuned to it, her movements sometimes syncing with the subtle rhythms of the vessel. Later, in the mess hall, Sorel sat alone at a corner table. She arranged her food with unusual precision, everything in its proper place. Around her, fragments of conversation drifted through the cramped space. "Heard she was demoted twice before landing here. Someone said it was a paperwork error that got her assigned to strategic weapons. Did you see her service record? Looks like it was assembled from spare parts." A young ensign, Raphael Kincaid, approached her table with a friendly smile. At 22, he still carried the earnest enthusiasm of the Naval Academy, untarnished by years of service. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Sorel gestured to the seat across from her. "Free country, ensign." Kincaid sat down with his tray. "Don't mind them," he said, nodding toward the gossiping sailors. "They treat all transfers like this until inspection's over." "I don't mind," Sorel said. "Silence makes the work easier." "What made you choose submarines? Most techs prefer surface vessels." Something flickered in Sorel's eyes, a brief telling moment quickly suppressed. "I go where I'm needed." The ship's intercom interrupted their conversation. "All hands prepare for emergency dive drill. This is not an exercise." Around them, sailors jumped up, abandoning half-eaten meals as they rushed to their stations. In contrast, Sorel remained eerily calm, taking a final sip of her coffee before standing. Kincaid noticed her composure. "You've done this before." "Something like that," Sorel said, leaving her tray precisely aligned with the table edge. As they moved through the narrow corridors, sailors rushed past them, stress evident on their faces. Sorel navigated the chaos with the ease of someone who had spent years in submarine service, her movements fluid despite the cramped spaces. The emergency drill lasted 40 minutes, during which Sorel performed her duties with mechanical precision. When it ended, Commander Ashwin Ravindran, the submarine's executive officer, made a point of stopping by her station. Impressive response time, specialist, he noted, studying her with calculating eyes, especially for someone new to our boat. Muscle memory, sir, Sorrel replied. A torpedo is a torpedo, regardless of the vessel. Indeed, Ravindran said, unconvinced. Carry on. After the day shift ended, most of the crew retreated to their quarters or the recreation area. The missile bay emptied, leaving only the skeleton night crew monitoring essential systems. Sorrel, however, returned to her station, logging overtime hours. The night supervisor gave her a curious look, but didn't question her presence. In the dimmed lighting of night operations, she accessed restricted missile diagnostic systems, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency as she reviewed launch protocols and safety overrides. When footsteps approached, she seamlessly switched screens to routine maintenance logs, her movements so fluid that the transition would be undetectable, to casual observation. Lieutenant Lockhart appeared from the shadows. Working late, specialist? Pre-inspection checks, ma'am, Sorrel explained. Found anomalies in 3 targeting matrices. Lockhart frowned, stepping closer. That's impossible. Those were verified last week. See for yourself, Sorrel offered, bringing up the data on her screen. Lockhart leaned in, studying the display, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern as she processed what she was seeing. How did you catch this? Experience, Sorrel said simply. I'll need to report this immediately. This could have failed the inspection, Sorrel interrupted. Nothing more. Lockhart gave her a long look, the unspoken weight of nuclear weaponry hanging between them. That's not what I was going to say. They shared a moment of unspoken understanding before Lockhart left to file her report. Alone again, Sorrel opened a hidden directory on the system, accessible through a sequence of commands that bypass standard security protocols. Within it, she found a series of unauthorized command codes recently embedded in the launch sequence. Her expression hardened as she whispered to herself, 48 hours, earlier than I thought. The next morning, preparations for the Admiral's inspection reached fever pitch. Every surface gleamed, every system ran at optimal efficiency, and every sailor stood at perfect attention as Admiral Zenith Hargrove boarded the submarine. At 62, Hargrove carried the weight of his rank with practiced authority. His uniform displayed a collection of ribbons and medals that told the story of a distinguished career, and the stars on his collar had been earned through both battlefield courage and political acumen. He moved through the submarine with a critical eye, finding fault where others saw perfection. Junior officers wilted under his gaze, and even Commander Ravindran seemed tense in his presence. When the inspection party reached the missile bay, Hargrove examined each station with methodical scrutiny. He barely acknowledged the enlisted personnel until he reached Sorrel's station. Walk me through your pre-launch verification sequence, specialist, he commanded, his voice carrying the expectation of immediate compliance. Sorrel demonstrated the procedure with calm efficiency, her hands moving through the complex series of checks with practiced ease. The Admiral watched with growing interest, his eyes narrowing slightly. You're familiar with Tomahawk's classified guidance safeguards, he noted. That's unusual for your rank. I read the manuals, sir, Sorrel answered, her expression neutral. Those protocols aren't in any manual I've authorized. His voice lowered, the conversation suddenly private despite the crowded bay. Who trained you? Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the submarine. The vessel shifted into emergency posture, lights dimming as systems redirected power. Drill, Lieutenant, Blackwell announced loudly. Simulated hostile targeting. All stations respond. The crew jumped into action, the inspection forgotten as they responded to the simulated threat. Sorrel's hands moved with practiced speed, her eyes scanning multiple screens simultaneously as she monitored the missile system's response. She spotted a subtle anomaly in the defensive countermeasures, a millisecond delay in the electronic warfare suite's response time. Without hesitation, she entered a correction sequence, bringing the system back into optimal configuration. Admiral Hargrove noticed. That wasn't part of the drill. It should have been, sir, Sorrel responded quietly. The Admiral studied her for a long moment before moving on, his expression thoughtful. After the drill concluded, he gathered his staff in a secure briefing room, away from the enlisted crew's ears. The specialist in Missile Bay 3, he began without preamble. Vega, what's her story? Commander Ravindran hesitated, exchanging a glance with Lieutenant Blackwell. Transfer from Indian Head, sir. Arrived 3 weeks ago. Her file? Clean, sir. Perhaps too clean. There are some inconsistencies I've been investigating. Expedite that, Hargrove ordered. There's something familiar about her technique, something I've only seen in... He stopped himself. Never mind, keep her under observation. That evening, Sorrel returned to the cramped crew quarters she shared with 3 other female specialists. Her space was Spartan even by submarine standards, her few possessions neatly arranged in her locker. She immediately noticed that something was wrong. Nothing was missing, but items had been minutely repositioned, the alignment of her spare uniform off by millimeters. Her personal tablet shifted slightly from its usual position. Ensign Kincaid approached as she examined her space. Someone went through your things? Appears so, Sorrel said calmly. Happened to me my first week, Kincaid offered sympathetically. They're just hazing you. No, Sorrel said with certainty. This was professional. You talk like you've been through this before, Kincaid observed, studying her with new curiosity. Sorrel allowed a small smile. Everyone has secrets, Ensign. Even you? He asked playfully. Especially me. Her tone made his smile fade. Lieutenant Lockhart appeared at the doorway, her expression grim. Vega? With me. Now. They walked in silence through the submarine's narrow corridors, passing sailors who glanced at them with curiosity. Lockhart's face revealed nothing as she led Sorrel to a secure communications room tucked deep within the administrative section. Inside, Commander Ravindran waited with a folder on the small conference table. His expression was unreadable as he gestured for Sorrel to sit. We've received an alert from Naval Intelligence, he began without preamble. Someone accessed our strategic weapons systems using outdated command protocols last night. Sounds serious, Sorrel replied evenly. Those protocols were decommissioned 7 years ago, Lockhart added, standing behind Sorrel's chair. Only someone from the original Aegis development team would know them. Sorrel said nothing, her face betraying no emotion. Where were you stationed 7 years ago, Specialist? Ravindran asked, his eyes boring into hers. That information is in my file, Commander. Your file says you were at a training facility in San Diego, but there's no record of you ever checking in or out. He leaned forward. Who are you, really? Sorrel met his gaze steadily. Just a weapons specialist doing her job, sir. She paused, then added, Perhaps Naval Intelligence should focus on why those protocols still work on a modern submarine. Before Ravindran could respond, an urgent message arrived through the secure terminal. The communications officer's voice was tense over the intercom. All senior officers report to command. New deployment orders received. Ravindran rose, clearly frustrated by the interruption. This conversation isn't over, Specialist. As they left, Lockhart lingered behind momentarily. This isn't over, she whispered to Sorrel, echoing her superior's sentiment. Alone in the communications room, Sorrel waited 30 seconds, ensuring no one would return. She quickly retrieved a hidden communication device from inside her boot heel, a compact unit disguised as part of the insole. She transmitted a single encrypted message. Position compromised. Timetable accelerated. The screen on her device flashed once with a response. Contingency, Spectre authorized. Sorrel's expression shifted from the cautious mask of a technician to something harder, more focused. The transformation subtle but profound. So it begins, she whispered. In the command center, Admiral Hargrove reviewed the new orders with Commander Ravindran and the submarine's captain. The message had come directly from Naval Strategic Command, bypassing normal chains of communication. These coordinates, the captain said, studying the deployment position, they put us within first strike range of Chinese territorial waters. That's correct, Hargrove confirmed. Our orders are to maintain position and await further instruction. Sir, with respect, Ravindran interjected. This posture could be interpreted as provocative. That's not our concern, Commander, Hargrove replied coldly. Our concern is following orders. The captain exchanged a worried glance with his XO, but said nothing more. Orders were orders, even when they led to troubled waters. One more thing, Hargrove added. I want security enhanced around the missile bay. Authorized personnel only with armed guards at all access points. May I ask why, Admiral? The captain inquired carefully. Security concerns, Hargrove said vaguely. Nothing more. As the meeting adjourned, Ravindran lingered. Sir, about Specialist Vega, our conversation was interrupted. I'm aware of your concerns, Commander, Hargrove said. In fact, I share them. Continue your investigation, but do so discreetly. I don't want her alerted. You suspect her of something specific, sir? Hargrove considered his response carefully. Let's just say she reminds me of a program that officially never existed. Meanwhile, Sorrel moved through the submarine with heightened awareness. She noticed the increased security immediately. The armed guards positioned at key junctions. The subtle shift in the crew's behavior as tension permeated the vessel. In the mess hall, conversations were muted. Officers huddled in small groups, speaking in low tones. The typical banter and complaints had given way to an uneasy silence that spoke volumes about the crew's awareness that something unusual was happening. Kincaid found her as she finished her meal. We've changed course, he said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. Heading toward the South China Sea. New orders come all the time, Sorrel replied, her tone neutral. Not like this. The weapons bay is on lockdown now. Only senior officers and authorized technicians allowed. He studied her face. Like you. Just doing my job, Ensign. There are rumors, he continued, lowering his voice further, about why we're really here, that we're positioning for a first strike. Sorrel's hands paused momentarily as she aligned her utensils on her empty tray. What do you think about that? I think... Kincaid hesitated, internal conflict visible in his young face. I think starting wars isn't what we signed up for. She looked at him with new respect, seeing beyond his youth to the moral compass guiding him. No, it isn't. The intercom interrupted their conversation. Specialist Vega to the missile bay. Immediate attendance required. Sorrel stood, giving Kincaid a reassuring nod. It'll be fine. But as she made her way to the missile bay, passing through increased security checkpoints, her mind calculated possibilities and contingencies. The submarine's narrow corridors felt more confining than usual, the weight of the ocean above them more present. Admiral Hargrove waited in the missile bay with his security detail. His face was stern, but there was something else in his expression, a tightly controlled anticipation that made Sorrel's internal alarms intensify. Specialist, he acknowledged as she entered, we have a situation requiring your particular expertise. Sir, we've received new targeting parameters. Time sensitive. He motioned to the security officers. Clear the bay. This is classified. The security team hesitated, trained never to leave a flag officer alone, but Hargrove's glare sent them retreating to positions just outside the bay doors. When they were alone among the towering missile tubes, his demeanor changed subtly. I've been reviewing the anomalies you discovered yesterday, he began, circling her slowly. Fascinating work. Thank you, sir. In fact, I've been reviewing everything about you. His path completed a full circle around her, a predator assessing its prey. Your service record is flawless, too flawless. Thank you, sir, she repeated, her expression remaining neutral. It's the kind of record created when someone needs a cover story. He stopped directly in front of her. There was a program, years ago, elite operators embedded in regular units, call sign classification, Spectre. Sorrel's face betrayed nothing, but internally, her assessment of the situation shifted dramatically. Their records were immaculate but generic, like yours. Hargrove leaned closer, but they were discontinued after an operation in the South China Sea went wrong. All operatives were either reassigned or eliminated. An interesting history lesson, Admiral. Then there's your hands. He gestured toward them. You have trigger calluses inconsistent with technical work. And you compensate for an old injury to your right shoulder, characteristic of someone trained in close quarters combat. The intercom interrupted this dangerous conversation. Admiral Hargrove to command immediately. Priority Alpha. Hargrove studied her for another moment, his eyes calculating. Prepare the Tomahawks for live deployment. Authorization codes are being transmitted now. May I ask the target, sir? You may not, Specialist. He headed for the door but stopped, turning back to her. We'll continue this conversation later. As soon as he was gone, Sorrel moved to her terminal with urgent purpose. She bypassed security protocols using methods that would leave no trace in the system logs and accessed the new mission parameters. What she saw made her blood run cold. The coordinates targeted a Chinese civilian port city, home to millions of people, not a military installation, as would be expected in any legitimate operation. She quickly traced the authentication chain, following the digital breadcrumbs to their source. "It's him," she whispered, "just like Stillwater." The intercom announced with mechanical precision, "All weapon systems entering final preparation phase. Authentication required in 60 minutes." Sorrel's mind raced through scenarios and contingencies, the weight of what she'd discovered pressing down on her like the ocean above. She had trained for this moment, prepared for years, but the reality of what she faced now tested even her formidable resolve. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice between following orders and doing what's right, share your experience in the comments. How do we find courage when the moment of truth arrives? Subscribe for more stories that explore the quiet heroism hiding in everyday lives. The submarine hummed with tension. Armed guards stood at key checkpoints throughout the vessel, their presence a silent testament to the unusual circumstances. Sailors exchanged worried glances as they passed each other in narrow corridors, conversations falling silent when officers approached. Ensign Kincaid found Sorrel checking equipment in a maintenance alcove, her movements methodical despite the growing pressure around them. "Something's definitely happening," he said, keeping his voice low. "We've changed course, heading toward the South China Sea." Sorrel continued her work, appearing unsurprised. "New orders come all the time. Not like this." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "The weapons bay is on complete lockdown. Only senior officers and authorized technicians allowed." His eyes met hers. "Like you." "Just doing my job, Ensign," she replied, closing an access panel with practiced precision. "There are rumors," he continued, lowering his voice further, "about why we're really here, that we're positioning for a first strike." Sorrel's hands paused momentarily. "What do you think about that?" "I think—" Kincaid hesitated, internal conflict visible in his young face. "I think starting wars isn't what we signed up for." She looked at him with new respect. "No, it isn't." The intercom interrupted their conversation. "Specialist Vega to the missile bay. Immediate attendance required." Sorrel nodded to Kincaid. "It'll be fine." As she made her way through the submarine, she noted how the vessel itself seemed to reflect the mounting tension. The normally reassuring hum of machinery now felt ominous, the narrow passages more confining than usual. Even the air seemed thicker, harder to breathe. At the missile bay entrance, 2 armed guards verified her credentials before allowing her to pass. Inside, Admiral Hargrove waited with his personal security detail, his posture rigid with authority. "Specialist," he acknowledged as she entered. "We have a situation requiring your particular expertise. Sir, we've received new targeting parameters, time sensitive." He motioned to the security officers. "Clear the bay. This is classified." The security team hesitated, trained never to leave a flag officer alone, but Hargrove's sharp glare sent them retreating to positions just outside the doors. When they were alone among the towering missile tubes, his demeanor shifted subtly. "I've been reviewing the anomalies you discovered yesterday," he began, circling her slowly. "Fascinating work." "Thank you, sir. In fact, I've been reviewing everything about you." He completed a full circle around her, his eyes never leaving her face. "Your service record is flawless, too flawless." "Thank you, sir," she repeated, expression neutral. "It's the kind of record created when someone needs a cover story." He stopped directly in front of her. "There was a program, years ago, elite operators embedded in regular units, call sign classification, Spectre." Sorrel's face betrayed nothing, but internally, her assessment of the situation shifted dramatically. Their records were immaculate but generic, like yours. Hargrove leaned closer. But they were discontinued after an operation in the South China Sea went wrong. All operatives were either reassigned or eliminated. An interesting history lesson, Admiral. Then there's your hands. He gestured toward them. You have trigger calluses inconsistent with technical work, and you compensate for an old injury to your right shoulder, characteristic of someone trained in close quarters combat. The intercom interrupted, Admiral Hargrove to command immediately. Priority Alpha. Hargrove studied her for another moment. Prepare the Tomahawks for live deployment. Authorization codes are being transmitted now. May I ask the target, sir? You may not, Specialist. He headed for the door, but stopped. We'll continue this conversation later. As soon as he was gone, Sorrel moved to her terminal with urgent purpose. She bypassed security protocols, using methods that would leave no trace and accessed the new mission parameters. The coordinates targeted a Chinese civilian port city, home to millions of people, not a military installation as would be expected in any legitimate operation. She quickly traced the authentication chain, following the digital breadcrumbs to their source. It's him, she whispered, just like Stillwater. The intercom announced, all weapon systems entering final preparation phase. Authentication required in 60 minutes. In the command center, Admiral Hargrove strode in with barely contained urgency. Status report. On station in 30 minutes, sir, reported the navigation officer. Chinese vessels are maintaining distance but have altered course to shadow us. As expected, Hargrove said. Communications? Secure channels only, per your orders. Stratcom confirms receipt of our position update. Hargrove nodded. And do they confirm our contingency authorization? The communications officer looked confused. Sir, there's been no mention of contingency protocols. Never mind. Continue preparations. Commander Ravindran approached cautiously. Sir, may I ask about our current objective? The crew is concerned. The crew is to follow orders, Commander. Hargrove cut him off. Nothing more. Yes, sir. It's just these coordinates. They're not military targets. Classified, Commander. Return to your station. As Ravindran left, he exchanged a concerned glance with Lieutenant Lockhart, who had been monitoring the conversation from her console. The subtle exchange did not escape Hargrove's notice. In the missile bay, Sorrel worked methodically, appearing to prepare the weapon systems. In reality, she was implementing a sophisticated delay protocol, creating a diagnostic loop in the targeting systems that would buy critical time. Lieutenant Lockhart entered, closing the door behind her. Her face was drawn, the weight of what she had discovered evident in her posture. I need to know what's happening, Lockhart demanded quietly. These coordinates don't make sense for any authorized operation. Sorrel looked up. You've verified them? They target a civilian port, millions of people. Lockhart's voice was tight with controlled emotion. Tell me you're not actually arming those missiles. I'm doing exactly what I need to do, Lieutenant. Sorrel continued working, her fingers dancing across the console with practiced efficiency. And soon, you'll need to make a choice about what you're going to do. What does that mean? It means sometimes the greatest loyalty isn't to a person, but to the oath we all took. Sorrel met her eyes. To defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Understanding dawned on Lockhart's face. The Admiral? Return to your station, Lieutenant. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. As Lockhart left, Sorrel finished her modifications and secured her terminal. She retrieved a small device from a hidden compartment in her boot and placed it against the underside of her console, a backup plan if all else failed. The intercom announced, T-minus 30 minutes to deployment position. All senior officers report to command. Throughout the submarine, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Sailors moved with heightened alertness, conversations reduced to whispers. Even the vessel's mechanical sounds seemed amplified, the creaks and groans of the hull more pronounced as they descended to optimal firing depth. In the crew quarters, Ensign Kincaid sat on his bunk, staring at his tablet. The deployment orders displayed on his screen made no tactical sense to him. His Naval Academy training had covered every legitimate scenario for submarine warfare, and this matched none of them. Sorrel found him there, his young face troubled. Ensign? Specialist. He looked up, relief flashing across his features. Something's wrong. The navigation officer just told me our targeting coordinates. It's not a military installation. I know, Sorrel said quietly, but that would mean we're preparing for an unprovoked attack on civilians. His voice cracked slightly. That can't be right. It would mean exactly what you think it means, Ensign. Her voice was steel. Now, I need you to return to your station and wait. Wait for what? Sorrel's eyes met his. For the right moment to remember what you really serve. Before he could respond, alarms began to sound. The corridor lights shifted to red. and the calm, automated voice of the submarine's alert system filled every compartment. Security alert. All personnel report to battle stations. This is not a drill. Sailors rushed through the corridors as Sorrel moved deliberately against the flow, back toward the missile bay. Her face betrayed no emotion, but her mind calculated odds and contingencies with each step. Commander Ravindran's voice came over the intercom. Attention all hands. Prepare for emergency protocol implementation. Authorization sequence initiating. In the command center, Admiral Hargrove stood over the communications console, his face taut with controlled anticipation. Send the authentication codes now. Sir, the communications officer began hesitantly. Stratcom is requesting verification of target parameters. They're questioning the civilian designation. Send the codes, Hargrove repeated, his voice hardening. That's a direct order. Captain Marshall, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, if Stratcom is questioning the target, perhaps we should reassess. The orders come directly from the Joint Chiefs, Captain. The target is confirmed. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. Or are you refusing a direct order? The challenge hung in the air, heavy with implication. Captain Marshall held the Admiral's gaze for a long moment before responding. No, sir, but I am requesting written confirmation of the order. Your request is noted, Captain. Hargrove turned back to the communications officer. Send the codes, now. As Sorrel reached the missile bay, armed security personnel appeared at the corridor junction, weapons at the ready. Specialist Vega, one called. Hold position. She turned slowly, hands visible. What seems to be the problem, petty officer? Admiral's orders. You're to be escorted to the brig immediately. Sorrel nodded, compliant. Of course. Lead the way. As they moved through the narrow corridor, she studied their positions, calculating odds and timing. When they passed a maintenance junction, she made her move with practiced precision, a sharp strike to the lead guard's throat, followed by a swift disarm of the second. Both men dropped before they could radio for help. Sorry about that, she muttered, zip-tying them in the maintenance alcove. You were just following orders. Using a security card taken from one of the guards, she accessed a restricted maintenance terminal and initiated an override sequence, a buried protocol installed years ago for exactly this scenario. The screen confirmed, Omega Protocol accessible, require final authentication. Sorrel hesitated, knowing that once activated, there was no turning back. Everything she had built, every cover identity, would be burned forever. The intercom broke her contemplation. Missile deployment sequence initiating, T-minus 15 minutes. Her resolve hardened. She pressed her palm to the scanner and spoke clearly. Authorization, Spectre 1. Throughout the submarine, every system momentarily paused as if the vessel itself were taking a breath. Then security protocols activated with mechanical precision. Sealed doors closed automatically as the ship's AI announced with dispassionate clarity, authorization override detected, clearance level Omega, confirming active command, Spectre 1. In the command center, Admiral Hargrove froze mid-sentence, color draining from his face. What the hell is that? Demanded Captain Marshall. Impossible, Hargrove whispered. That program was terminated. The weapons officer reported with confusion. Sir, all missile systems are going into security lockdown. I can't override. Lieutenant Lockhart, at her station, kept her expression carefully. Neutral, but her eyes reflected understanding as the pieces fell into place. Find Specialist Vega, Hargrove ordered, his composure cracking. Now! Security teams rushed through the submarine, but the automated lockdown had sealed many compartments, creating a maze of blocked passages. Sorrel used this to her advantage, moving through maintenance tunnels and emergency access ways, known only to those with the highest security clearance. She reached the missile bay just as Hargrove arrived with armed guards, their weapons trained on her. The bay's security lights had shifted from amber to red, indicating the complete override of normal command protocols. What have you done? Hargrove demanded, barely containing his rage. Prevented an unauthorized first strike, Admiral. Sorrel's voice had changed, harder, more authoritative. The launch coordinates you provided target a civilian port, not a military installation. You've committed treason, Hargrove shouted. Security, arrest her. The guards hesitated as the ship's system announced again. Spectre 1 confirmed, command authority reinstated. 7 years ago, Operation Stillwater was compromised, Sorrell said, stepping forward. Our team was betrayed by someone with Admiral stars who wanted to provoke a conflict. We never learned who. She moved closer to him. Until I traced the same command signature in these launch protocols. Your signature, Admiral. You have no proof, Hargrove said, but his hand trembled slightly. I have every proof. She tapped her console, bringing up classified documents, including records of your meetings with foreign agents and the algorithms you use to alter targeting data. Commander Ravindran entered with more security personnel. Sir, Naval Command is demanding explanation for the Omega alert. Arrest this woman, Hargrove ordered. She's hijacked our systems. Ravindran hesitated. Sir, we're receiving direct communication from Stratcom. They're confirming the Spectre 1 protocol. That's impossible, Hargrove insisted. That program doesn't exist. I used to train the men who gave you those stars, Admiral, Sorrell said quietly, before you conspired to have my team eliminated. The revelation hung in the air. Security personnel looked between Hargrove and Sorrell, uncertain where true authority now lay. Who are you? Hargrove finally asked, his authority crumbling visibly. Commander Alara Vordain, she answered, former director of Naval Special Warfare's Deep Cover Operations, officially deceased as of October 17, 2018. The name sent a visible shock through the room. Even those too young to have served during that era recognized the legendary call sign associated with it. She turned to Commander Ravindran. You'll find all the evidence against Admiral Hargrove in a secure server. Access code Stillwater Echo 7. Ravindran studied her, weighing decades of military discipline against the unprecedented situation before him. Finally, he nodded to security. Detain the Admiral. This is mutiny, Hargrove shouted as security officers moved toward him. I'll have all of you court-martialed. No, sir, Captain Marshall said, entering the bay. It's the proper chain of command reasserting itself. As security took Hargrove away, Alara input one final command sequence. Drill complete, no casualties, this time. When she walked past the stunned sailors, they instinctively snapped to attention. Ravindran hesitated, then offered a crisp salute. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. The next hours passed in controlled chaos. The submarine surfaced, establishing secure communications with Naval Command. Teams of intelligence officers were dispatched to rendezvous with the vessel, and Admiral Hargrove was placed under heavy guard. In the captain's quarters, Alara sat across from Captain Marshall and Commander Ravindran, the artifice of Specialist Vega completely shed. How long have you been embedded? Marshall asked. 3 months of preparation, Alara answered. 6 weeks aboard. And no one knew, not even naval intelligence? That's the point of deep cover, Captain. No one can betray what they don't know. The Spectre program, Ravindran said. We always thought it was a myth, stories to scare junior officers into following security protocols. Sometimes myths serve a purpose, Alara replied. They remind us there are fail-safes beyond the normal chain of command. How did you know? Marshall asked. About Hargrove's plan? 7 years ago, I led a team investigating weapons proliferation in the South China Sea. We discovered evidence of a high-level naval officer selling targeting algorithms to foreign interests. Before we could identify them, our operation was compromised. My team was ambushed. I was the only survivor. She touched her right shoulder unconsciously. I was officially declared dead, along with the entire Spectre program. But some programs never truly end. They just go deeper underground. And you've been hunting the traitor ever since, Ravindran concluded. Until 3 months ago, when intelligence detected anomalous code in the new generation of submarine targeting systems. Code that matched what we found 7 years ago. And it led you to Hargrove, Marshall said. To this vessel, specifically. I needed proof of his direct involvement, not just circumstantial evidence. By letting him proceed far enough to incriminate himself, you risked millions of lives, Ravindran noted. No, Alara's eyes were steel. The missiles were never going to launch. I made certain of that before I ever set foot on this submarine. The intercom interrupted. Captain, secure transmission from Naval Command, Priority Alpha. Marshall rose. They'll want a full debriefing, and they'll have questions about your status, Commander. My status is classified, Captain, above your clearance level. Alara stood. I'll handle Naval. Command. As they left the captain's quarters, sailors in the corridor stopped and stared. Word had spread throughout the vessel, the legend of Spectre 1 growing with each retelling. Junior officers straightened to perfect attention as she passed, while veterans regarded her with a mix of awe and wary respect. Lieutenant Lockhart approached, saluting crisply. "Commander, Naval Intelligence is requesting access to the missile base systems for evidence collection." "Granted, but I want you to oversee it personally, Lieutenant. There are still classified protocols that need to be protected." "Understood, ma'am." Lockhart hesitated. "If I may ask, how did you know you could trust me? When you discovered the targeting anomalies, your concern was for the potential casualties, not the inspection failure. It revealed your priorities." Ilara's expression softened slightly. "Good officers are distinguished not by how well they follow orders, but by knowing which orders to question." In the secure communications room, Ilara faced a panel of stern-faced admirals via encrypted video link. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to calculated reassessment. "Commander Vordan," acknowledged Admiral Chen, the most senior officer present. "Your reappearance is unexpected." "Necessary, Admiral," Ilara replied, "as was the reactivation of the Spectre protocols." "Those protocols were decommissioned for good reason," another admiral interjected. "Too much authority outside the chain of command." "And yet that independence prevented catastrophe today," Ilara countered. "Admiral Hargrove's plan would have triggered a war." "We're reviewing the evidence now," Chen said. "Preliminary analysis confirms your allegations. Hargrove will face court-martial for treason." "And the Spectre program?" The admirals exchanged glances before Chen responded. "Officially, it remains non-existent. Your status is being reevaluated." "I understand, sir. Report to Washington immediately for full debriefing. A transport is being arranged." "With respect, Admiral, my mission isn't complete. Hargrove wasn't working alone." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The algorithms embedded in the targeting systems were too sophisticated for one person. Hargrove had technical assistance, likely from someone with access to multiple vessels. You believe there are other compromised submarines. I believe this was one part of a larger operation, and I've barely scratched the surface." The admirals conferred briefly off camera before Chen returned his attention to her. "What are you proposing, Commander?" "Let me continue my work, not from the shadows this time, but with official standing. The best place to hunt for compromised systems is from within the fleet itself." "You're suggesting we reinstate you, after 7 years officially dead?" "I'm suggesting you use the asset you have, Admiral, before the next Admiral Hargrove succeeds where he failed." After the communication ended, Ilara stood alone in the small room, the weight of the past 7 years pressing down on her. The submarine continued its gentle rocking motion, the sea a constant presence around them. Ensign Kincaid found her there, his young face solemn. "Commander, permission to speak freely?" "Granted, Ensign." "The crew is talking. About you, about what happened." He hesitated. "Some are calling it mutiny, others are calling it salvation." "And what do you call it, Ensign?" "I call it the right thing done the hard way." He straightened. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that what you did today mattered." Ilara studied him, seeing something of herself in his earnest conviction. "Thank you, Kincaid. That means more than you know." The submarine's intercom interrupted. "Attention all hands. Prepare for surfacing maneuvers. Estimated time to rendezvous with USS Roosevelt. 2 hours." As Kincaid left, Ilara turned to the small porthole in the communications room. Through it, she could see the endless dark of the deep ocean, a fitting metaphor for the world she had inhabited for so long. Soon they would surface, and the light would bring new challenges, new visibility. Her reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass, a face she had almost forgotten after years of being someone else. Commander Ilara Vordan, not Specialist Sorel Vega. A legend rather than a shadow. The intercom sounded again. "Commander Vordan to the bridge. Priority message from Stratcom." As she made her way through the submarine, sailors parted before her, whispers following in her wake. The legend was already growing, the story spreading throughout the fleet. By nightfall, every captain in the Navy would know that Spectre 1 had returned from the dead to prevent catastrophe. On the bridge, Captain Marshall handed her a secure tablet. "Direct from the Joint Chiefs Commander, your eyes only." The message was brief, the implications enormous. Anomalous command patterns detected in 3 additional vessels. Proceed as authorized. Ilara looked up, meeting Marshall's questioning gaze. It seems I'll be needing transport after all, Captain, but not to Washington. Where to? The USS Vigilant. She's currently deployed in the Persian Gulf. Understanding dawned in Marshall's eyes. Another submarine. The first of 3, Ilara confirmed. It appears Spectre 1 has more work to do. Behind them, the ocean stretched endless and dark, hiding its secrets beneath impenetrable depths. But for the first time in 7 years, Ilara stepped fully into the light, ready to face whatever waited on the surface. Have you ever witnessed someone who stood alone against a system that had lost its way? Share your thoughts on what true courage looks like in the face of overwhelming pressure. Subscribe to follow Commander Vordan's continuing mission as she hunts for traitors within the fleet. Admiral Hargrove burst into the missile bay with armed security personnel, their weapons trained on. Sorel, his face flushed with barely controlled rage as he took in the scene before him. The missile bay's security lights had shifted from the standard amber to emergency red, bathing everything in a crimson glow that felt both ominous and revealing. Sorel stood calmly at her terminal, her posture no longer that of a deferential technician, but something altogether different, a subtle transformation that even the most oblivious sailor could perceive. The surrounding system displays showed the unprecedented override in progress, security protocols activating across the submarine with mechanical precision. "What have you done?" Hargrove demanded, voice tight with fury. "Prevented an unauthorized first strike, Admiral." Sorrel's voice had changed, the careful submissiveness gone, replaced by clear authority. "The launch coordinates you provided target a civilian port, not a military installation." "You've committed treason!" Hargrove shouted, his composed facade crumbling. "Security! Arrest her!" The guards hesitated, their training demanding immediate compliance, but something in the current situation giving them pause. Throughout the bay, the ship's system announced again with dispassionate clarity. Spectre 1 confirmed, command authority reinstated. The effect of those words on Admiral Hargrove was immediate and profound, his face drained of color, recognition and disbelief warring in his expression. Sorel stepped forward, moving with the confidence of someone reclaiming their rightful place. 7 years ago, Operation Stillwater was compromised. Our team was betrayed by someone with Admiral stars who wanted to provoke a conflict. We never learned who. She moved closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "Until I trace the same command signature in these launch protocols." "Your signature, Admiral." "You have no proof," Hargrove said, but his hand trembled slightly, betraying his unraveling composure. "I have every proof." She tapped her console, bringing up classified documents that should have been unreachable, including records of your meetings with foreign agents and the algorithms you used to alter targeting data. Commander Ravindran entered with additional security personnel, his expression a mixture of confusion and growing comprehension. "Sir, Naval Command is demanding explanation for the Omega alert." "Arrest this woman," Hargrove ordered, desperation edging into his voice. "She's hijacked our systems." Ravindran hesitated, looking between the Admiral and Sorel. "Sir, we're receiving direct communication from Stratcom. They're confirming the Spectre 1 protocol." "That's impossible," Hargrove insisted, his voice rising. "That program doesn't exist." "I used to train the men who gave you those stars, Admiral," Sorel said quietly, each word landing with precision. "Before you conspired to have my team eliminated." The revelation hung in the air, heavy with implication. Security personnel looked between Hargrove and Sorel, the chain of command suddenly unclear in this extraordinary situation. The entire missile bay had fallen silent, except for the gentle hum of equipment and the periodic alert tones from the override system. "Who are you?" Hargrove finally asked, his authority visibly crumbling. "Commander Ilara Vordan," she answered, straightening to her full height. "Former Director of Naval Special Warfare's Deep Cover Operations, officially deceased as of October 17, 2018. The name sent a visible ripple through the room. Even sailors too young to have served during that era recognized the legendary call sign associated with it. Stories of Spectre 1 were part of naval lore, whispered in officer training, but never officially acknowledged. She turned to Commander Ravindran. "You'll find all the evidence against Admiral Hargrove in a secure server. Access code Stillwater Echo 7. Ravindran studied her, weighing decades of military discipline against the unprecedented situation before him. In his eyes, Alara could see the calculation, the assessment of where true authority now lay. Finally, he nodded to security. "Detain the Admiral!" "This is mutiny!" Hargrove shouted as security officers moved toward him. "I'll have all of you court-martialed." "No, sir," Captain Marshall said, entering the bay, his voice steady. "It's the proper chain of command reasserting itself." As security took Hargrove away, Alara input one final command sequence, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency across the console. Drill complete, no casualties, this time. When she walked past the stunned sailors, they instinctively snapped to attention. Ravindran hesitated, then offered a crisp salute. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment, from standing in the presence of someone who had become more symbol than person in naval circles. The hours that followed unfolded in controlled chaos. The submarine surfaced, establishing secure communications with Naval Command. Teams of intelligence officers were dispatched to rendezvous with the vessel, and Admiral Hargrove was placed under heavy guard in the officers' quarters, stripped of command authority. Throughout the submarine, the atmosphere transformed. The tension that had permeated every compartment gradually gave way to a different kind of energy, a mixture of awe and cautious relief. Sailors spoke in hushed tones, recounting what they had witnessed or heard, the story growing with each retelling. In the captain's quarters, Alara sat across from Captain Marshall and Commander Ravindran, the artificial persona of Specialist Vega completely shed. She sat with the natural authority of someone accustomed to command, her posture reflecting years of leadership. "How long have you been embedded?" Marshall asked, still processing the extraordinary events. 3 months of preparation, Alara answered, 6 weeks aboard. "And no one knew? Not even naval intelligence?" "That's the point. Of deep cover, Captain. No one can betray what they don't know." "The Spectre program," Ravindran said, leaning forward. "We always thought it was a myth. Stories to scare junior officers into following security protocols." "Sometimes myths serve a purpose," Alara replied. "They remind us there are fail-safes beyond the normal chain of command." "How did you know?" Marshall asked. "About Hargrove's plan?" 7 years ago, I led a team investigating weapons proliferation in the South China Sea. We discovered evidence of a high-level naval officer selling targeting algorithms to foreign interests. Before we could identify them, our operation was compromised. My team was ambushed. Her voice remained steady, but something in her eyes revealed the personal cost. "I was the only survivor." She touched her right shoulder unconsciously. "I was officially declared dead, along with the entire Spectre program. But some programs never truly end. They just go deeper underground. And you've been hunting the traitor ever since," Ravindran concluded, "until 3 months ago, when intelligence detected anomalous code in the new generation of submarine targeting systems. Code that matched what we found 7 years ago. And it led you to Hargrove," Marshall said. "To this vessel, specifically. I needed proof of his direct involvement, not just circumstantial evidence. By letting him proceed far enough to incriminate himself, you risked millions of lives," Ravindran noted, his tone not accusatory but seeking understanding. "No." Alara's eyes were steel. "The missiles were never going to launch. I made certain of that before I ever set foot on this submarine." The intercom interrupted. "Captain, secure transmission from Naval Command, Priority Alpha." Marshall rose. "They'll want a full debriefing, and they'll have questions about your status, Commander." "My status is classified, Captain, above your clearance level." Alara stood. "I'll handle Naval Command." As they left the captain's quarters, sailors in the corridor stopped and stared. Word had spread throughout the vessel, the legend of Spectre 1 growing with each passing hour. Junior officers straightened to perfect attention as she passed, while veterans regarded her with a mixture of awe and wary respect. Lieutenant Lockhart approached, saluting crisply. "Commander, Naval Intelligence is requesting access to the missile bay systems for evidence collection." "Granted, but I want you to oversee it personally, Lieutenant. There are still classified protocols that need to be protected." "Understood, ma'am." Lockhart hesitated. "If I may ask, how did you know you could trust me? When you discovered the targeting anomalies, your concern was for the potential casualties. not the inspection failure. It revealed your priorities. Alara's expression softened slightly. Good officers are distinguished not by how well they follow orders, but by knowing which orders to question. In the secure communications room, Alara faced a panel of stern-faced admirals via encrypted video link. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to calculated reassessment as they processed her return from the dead and the implications of Hargrove's betrayal. "Commander Vordan," acknowledged Admiral Chen, the most senior officer present. "Your reappearance is unexpected." "Necessary, Admiral," Alara replied, as was the reactivation of the Spectre protocols. "Those protocols were decommissioned for good reason," another admiral interjected. "Too much authority outside the chain of command." "And yet that independence prevented catastrophe today," Alara countered. "Admiral Hargrove's plan would have triggered a war." "We're reviewing the evidence now," Chen said. "Preliminary analysis confirms your allegations. Hargrove will face court-martial for treason." "And the Spectre program?" The admirals exchanged glances before Chen responded. "Officially, it remains non-existent. Your status is being re-evaluated." "I understand, sir. Report to Washington immediately for full debriefing. A transport is being arranged." "With respect, Admiral, my mission isn't complete. Hargrove wasn't working alone." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The algorithms embedded in the targeting systems were too sophisticated for one person. Hargrove had technical assistance, likely from someone with access to multiple vessels." "You believe there are other compromised submarines?" "I believe this was one part of a larger operation, and I've barely scratched the surface." The admirals conferred briefly off camera before Chen returned his attention to her. "What are you proposing, Commander?" "Let me continue my work, not from the shadows this time, but with official standing. The best place to hunt for compromised systems is from within the fleet itself." "You're suggesting we reinstate you, after 7 years officially dead?" "I'm suggesting you use the asset you have, Admiral, before the next Admiral Hargrove succeeds where he failed." The communication ended, leaving Alara alone in the small room. She stood motionless for a moment, absorbing the weight of what had transpired and what lay ahead. The submarine continued its gentle rocking motion, the sea a constant presence around them. 1 week later, a closed hearing convened at Naval Command Center in Washington. Admiral Hargrove sat in custody, his uniform stripped of insignia, while intelligence officers reviewed the extensive evidence against him. Commander Ravindran testified about the events aboard the Independence, his account corroborated by ship logs and system records. "And you verified the authentication codes?" asked the panel chair, a stern admiral with decades of service evident in the lines of her face. "Yes, ma'am," Ravindran confirmed. "They were legitimate Omega-level clearance. When we contacted Stratcom, they confirmed the Spectre protocol had been activated for the first time in 7 years. And Specialist Vega, or Commander Vordan, where is she now?" "She was extracted by Naval Intelligence immediately upon our return to port. Her current whereabouts are classified." The hearing continued for 3 days, most of it closed to all but the highest-ranking officials. What emerged was a picture of calculated betrayal spanning years, of classified algorithms sold to foreign interests, and of a plan to provoke conflict that would have cost millions of lives. 2 weeks after the incident, aboard the USS Independence, the crew gathered on the main deck for a special ceremony. The submarine had returned to its regular patrol rotation, the extraordinary events of recent weeks fading into carefully managed official silence. Lieutenant Lockhart, now acting as interim weapons officer, pinned a commendation on Ensign Kincaid's uniform for alerting command to anomalies in the weapons systems, preventing a potential catastrophic incident. The official narrative had been carefully constructed, transforming the near disaster into a successful security drill, with Kincaid's role highlighted while Alara Vordan's involvement remained unmentioned. It was the Navy way, burying the extraordinary beneath layers of mundane explanation. After the ceremony, Kincaid found Lockhart alone in the officers' mess. "We both know I didn't discover those anomalies," he said quietly. "It was Vega, or whoever she really was." Lockhart nodded, understanding his discomfort with unearned recognition. "Some contributions remain unacknowledged, Ensign. That's the nature of our service. But she saved us from starting a war, and no one will ever know." "Someone knows." Lockhart handed him a small package that had arrived with the weekly mail delivery. "This came for you today." Inside, Kincaid found a vintage submarine service pin, the kind given to officers who served in the most critical Cold War missions. With it was a handwritten note. Some battles are fought in silence. Keep watching the systems, not the recognition. EV. He ran his fingers over the pin, feeling the weight of its history and meaning. Will we ever see her again? I don't know, Lockhart admitted, but I suspect wherever there's a threat from within, she'll be there, whether we see her or not. The submarine continued its silent patrol beneath the waves, its crew forever changed by what they had witnessed, by the knowledge that sometimes the greatest threats came not from external enemies, but from within the very systems designed to protect them. 1 month after the Hargrove incident, in a secure briefing room deep within the Pentagon, high-ranking officers reviewed the case and its implications for naval security. The room was spartanly furnished, designed for function rather than comfort, with reinforced walls that prevented any electronic surveillance. The Hargrove case exposes critical vulnerabilities in our command structure, concluded a senior admiral, his voice grave. The fact that he came so close to initiating an unauthorized strike is deeply concerning. The Spectre program was decommissioned for good reason, countered another officer. Too much authority in the hands of operatives outside the chain of command creates its own risks. An intelligence director, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. Yet it was precisely that independence that prevented catastrophe. Sometimes the system needs protection from itself. The door opened and Alara entered, now wearing a commander's uniform with full decorations. Gone was any trace of Specialist Vega, replaced by the authority and presence of a senior officer. The assembled officers stood in respect, their reaction a testament to how quickly her legend had spread, even among those too senior to be easily impressed. Commander Vordan, the senior admiral acknowledged, your actions have been reviewed extensively. And, she asked simply, standing at parade rest before them, the program remains officially non-existent. Your record has been adjusted to reflect a special assignment these past 7 years. He slid a folder across the table. Your new orders. The Independence needs a permanent XO. Alara studied him, surprised by the direction. With respect, sir, I operate better from the shadows. Sometimes the most effective oversight happens in plain sight, Commander, the intelligence director said, a slight smile softening his weathered face. Besides, every sailor on that vessel already knows that somewhere, somehow, Spectre 1 is watching. The implications were clear. Her legend had value now, not as a secret weapon, but as a visible deterrent. Her presence aboard would serve as a constant reminder that the system had checks and balances beyond the official chain of command. 2 months later, Commander Alara Vordan prepared for her first official day as executive officer aboard the USS Independence. Her quarters were Spartan, but comfortable, a significant upgrade from the cramped specialist bunk she had occupied during her undercover assignment. As she pinned her insignia to her uniform, a message arrived on her secure terminal, the encryption level indicating it came directly from naval intelligence. Anomalous command patterns detected on 3 other submarines in the fleet. Alara paused, reading the message twice to ensure she understood the implications. Hargrove had not been working alone, as she had suspected. The network ran deeper, had more tentacles than even she had imagined. Her work was far from over. She smiled slightly, a predator sensing prey. For 7 years, she had existed in the shadows, a ghost haunting the edges of naval intelligence, seeking justice for her fallen team. Now she would operate in the light, with the full weight of her authority and legend behind her. She straightened her uniform and headed to the bridge. As she walked through the submarine's corridors, junior officers snapped to attention, while veterans offered respectful nods. The response was not merely to her rank, but to what she represented, to the story that had spread throughout the fleet. The junior officers on the bridge stood as she entered, their posture perfect, eyes forward, not because of her rank, but because of what they now knew she represented, the quiet guardians who serve without recognition, who define the standard without claiming it. Captain Marshall nodded respectfully as she took her position. Ready to begin our patrol, XO? Always ready, sir, she responded, her eyes scanning the bridge with professional assessment. Some battles never end. The massive submarine slipped beneath the waves, carrying its secrets into the deep. On its bridge stood a woman who had returned from the dead to prevent catastrophe, whose very presence now served as both deterrent and promise. In the silent depths where they patrolled, far from the eyes of the world, Ilara Vordan had become more than a naval officer, more than a commander. She had become Spectre One, a legend made flesh, a symbol of the silent guardians who stand watch when systems fail, who uphold oaths even when those above them falter. In the officers' mess weeks later, a junior lieutenant asked her directly, "Is it true what they say, that you were declared dead but kept fighting anyway?" Ilara considered him for a moment. "What matters isn't whether I died, Lieutenant. What matters is what I live for." The answer spread throughout the fleet, adding another layer to the growing legend. In naval academies, instructors began incorporating the Hargrove incident into ethics training, carefully anonymized but clear in its message. True service sometimes requires standing against authority. 6 months after her reinstatement, Ilara stood in her quarters, reviewing reports from across the fleet. The network she hunted remained elusive, its members careful, but she had identified 2 more compromised officers and prevented another potential disaster. A knock at her door interrupted her work. Ensign Kincaid entered, now wearing lieutenant's bars, his youthful face more seasoned, but still carrying the earnestness that had first caught her attention. "The new targeting protocols have been implemented fleet-wide, Commander," he reported. "Every submarine now has the safeguards you designed." "Good," she nodded. "And the training program?" "Proceeding as planned. Every weapons officer is being cross-trained to recognize unauthorized modifications." Ilara studied him, seeing how he had grown in the months since the incident. "You've done well, Lieutenant. Your attention to detail is exactly what this mission requires." "I had a good example to follow, ma'am," he replied. "Someone who taught me that rank isn't what makes a leader." She allowed a small smile. "We all serve something larger than ourselves, Kincaid. Remember that when the hard choices come." After he left, Ilara turned to the small viewport in her quarters. Beyond the reinforced glass lay the endless, dark of the deep ocean, a world of pressure and silence where the vessel moved like a ghost, unseen but ever present. It was an apt metaphor for her own existence, she reflected. For years, she had moved through the world invisibly, a ghost with a mission, carrying the weight of her fallen team and the oath she had sworn. Now she operated in the light, but the mission remained the same, to protect the system from threats within, to stand guard against those who would use authority for destruction. The submarine hummed around her, a living presence carrying 200 souls through the darkness. Each one trusted the chain of command with their lives, trusted that the orders they followed served a greater good. That trust was sacred, and those who betrayed it threatened not just individual missions, but the very foundation of military service. Ilara touched the commander's insignia on her uniform, feeling its weight. 7 years ago, she had been declared dead, her career and identity erased in service to a mission few would ever know about. Now she had returned, not as the same person who had disappeared, but as something more enduring. Not just Commander Vordan, but Spectre One, a guardian who watched from within the system itself, ready to step forward when all other safeguards failed. The intercom interrupted her reflection. "Commander Vordan to the bridge. New deployment orders received." She straightened her uniform and headed to the bridge, ready for whatever came next. As she walked through the submarine's corridors, sailors nodded respectfully, some straightening instinctively as she passed, not from fear or mere protocol, but from something deeper, a recognition of what she represented. The mission continued, as it always would. The silent service, moving through darkness, carrying its awesome power with the grave responsibility it demanded, and within it, equally silent but ever vigilant, moved those who guarded not just against external threats, but against the human failings that could turn that power toward destruction. In the end, Ilara reflected, that was the true meaning of service, the core of the oath they all took, whether they wore ensign's bars or admiral stars, to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Sometimes that meant standing alone against a system that had lost its way, holding to principles when others abandoned them. As she reached the bridge and took her position, the submarine continued its silent journey through the deep. Behind her stood the crew, before her lay the mission, and around them all, the endless ocean, hiding its secrets beneath impenetrable depths. But for Ilara Vordan, for Spectre One, the path forward was clear, illuminated by the oath that had guided her through death and resurrection, to serve, to protect, to stand guard, no matter the cost. Not for recognition or reward, but because someone had to hold the line when all other defenses failed. Have you ever witnessed someone quietly upholding what is right, even when those with more authority chose the wrong path? Those silent guardians exist in every workplace, every community, standing firm in their principles without seeking recognition. Share your stories of the unsung heroes in your life, and subscribe for more tales of those who serve something greater than themselves.